so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on the show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's interview episode, I'm very excited to have Sandra Champlain here with me on the show. Sandra is an afterlife researcher and author of the book, We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Hello there, Sandra. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Brandon. I'm so grateful you invited me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, this is a topic that I love to explore. I've had Eben Alexander on many months ago, and it's such a hot topic always in society. And I love the fact that it jumped out that you are coming from a skeptic's perspective, and I think that's important because there's a lot of people out there who are skeptical, and when you can kind of see both sides of the coin, it helps you to understand more fully what you're dealing with, right?
Oh, definitely. I wasn't just a skeptic. I was like adamant that there's no possible way any of this stuff could be real. Right. So it took me trying to just cure a fear of dying, and I got into this world I never expected myself in. So I feel that's what makes me a good messenger, because I can definitely see both sides of the coin because I've been there.
Right. And so often that's the case with people. It's like, the person who has dealt with the particular handicap is the best one to speak about it. The person, who had the addiction is the best one to help heal others. And before we dive into your story and how, I want to hear all of it. I get so excited here. I got ahead of myself. I always like to ask the same question opening up. And it's, you're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You've got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Wow. Great question. I would say, I help people believe in life after death, because when we don't have a fear of dying, we won't have a fear of living. And I help empower people to live the best possible life.
That's a good passion. I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you take a few minutes and just give us a little background? Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you go from skeptic to where you're at now, and just share what you feel called to share?
Yeah, I'd love to. A little bit about me. I'm talking to you now from Massachusetts. I have a day job. I am a chef. My mom and I own a catering business, and we cater for race car teams around the United States and Canada. So
cool.
interesting background. So I still maintain that. And in between races, I help, share the word "we don't die" and empower people through grief and to the other side of that. And how it all came about, back in the day when I was a teenager, I worked in a nursing home and I saw a lot of death. And although I never really made this connection, I think my mom did, because if you fast forward to when I was about 30 something years old, I developed this huge fear of dying. And it was one of these where I'd look up at the stars and I'd start thinking, there's such a bigger picture, and even though I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school most of my education, just having faith in God and Jesus and what I learned in church and in school wasn't enough to make the fear of death go away. And I wasn't sick. I did witness my grandfather's death. I had pets that had died when I was 14 years old. My dad was diagnosed with cancer, but miraculously survived a few months later. But this fear of, like, when I go to bed at night, if I did die, what would happen? Is it just over or not? And so being somebody that never believed in life after death, as far as this new age conversation. I go into Barnes and Nobles or Borders bookstores and I'd see that new age section and I would actually feel sorry for the people that were sitting reading those books. It was
You probably passed me. You probably passed me.
Oh my God. But it was really like, I would just think these people need to get a life. If you can't see it and touch it and feel it, like, it's not real. And not a bad thing. I mean, I grew up with, my dad was an airline pilot and had, I guess, instilled in us kids, I think maybe it was a healthy skepticism, but let me just say, we had a lady who lived in our small town in Connecticut where I grew up, who was a psychic, and she said, she made her prediction that the Maid of the Mist boat that circled around the Niagara Falls was going to capsize, and there were going to be all these deaf children. I remember that, and they were all going to die. So that was the big prediction coming from this lady. And I remember,
hold on, she predicted that it was going to capsize, and there would be deaf children on it at the time.
Yes.
That's a pretty detailed prediction. Okay, it
was, and it didn't come true, thankfully. Mm-hmm. And I remember my parents just laughing at it. Nobody can say what the future is going to hold. Nobody can tell you your, dead loved ones are around. I mean, and so I always believed my parents. They were the anchor to my life. And,
of course,
my dad's no longer presently on earth, but my mom is. But it's what they say goes. So I think that's probably where I got it from. And then, so this later on, this big fear of dying hits, right? So what do? I have got to quench this thirst for knowledge. So I hadn't even planned on visiting any of this woo-woo talk, as I would call it.
Right.
But I started studying religions, and I first started with my own religion, and then I got into all kinds of different religions, and even Buddhism and all kinds of things. And although I got this really great picture that most of the religions on planet Earth believe in the afterlife, nobody said anything that just rested my fear. So, okay, what do I do now? And so I had a friend who was a little on the woo-woo side, but I still liked her. Nancy was her name. And she invited me to see someone who was a medium. And, there's a little backstory there, too long to share right this second. But bottom line is I went to see this woman named Doreen Virtue in a group of several hundred people, and she was doing a stage show. So, I'm always up for entertainment. And she was so specific with people in the audience, who she saw around them, and the people would just fall apart, really specifics. And so my mind's going, well, this can't possibly be real. This is entertainment.
Right. What's the trick?
They're planted in the audience.
Right.
And I thought, and by the end of that evening, though, it wasn't like she was trying to sell us anything. And I thought, God, this didn't cost a lot of money to experience what I just did. So what was starting to happen is this fear of dying was like saying, you gotta research this, So I discreetly looked on the internet and I found this Doreen Virtue had a 3-day course in mediumship. And the promise, Brandon, was if you attend my course, you will be someone who can accurately tell the dead people around others. So I'm thinking there's no freaking way.
That's quite the guarantee.
And I got to take this course. So I lied to everybody in my life, and I said I was going to a workshop about human development because, I was doing that kind of stuff at the time. And so I very secretly flew out to Laguna Beach is where we were.
Oh, that's right near me. I'm one city over from where I'm at right now.
Very cool.
I used to live there.
Oh, super place. But there I was with this group of what I would call woo-woo people. Not a great expression, but, they're wearing like the long dresses and the gypsy wear and stuff, and mostly women, about 20 people. There's a couple of guys there. And then there's me. So I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing here? So Doreen seemed nice enough, and she said, I want to just explain a little bit about mediumship and where our dead friends live and, how it is that we can connect with them. And she says, over the course of this weekend, I'll be showing you how to do it, but I want to just give you an overview. So just for fun, she says, I want you to just pretend we're mediums. I'm just going to walk you through how we will do it when the time comes. So she says, everybody get a partner. So I picked some lady, I didn't know anybody, and just sit knee to knee. And she said, I want you to hold hands. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to pretend there's this white light of safe energy around you. And she says, your family and friends that are in the hereafter, they still retain their personalities. And so you got to be polite, introduce yourself to them. And she says, basically, I want one of you guys to go first. And she says, I want you to pretend that there's a person standing behind your partner. And with your eyes closed, just tell the story, make up who they are, who they would be, how they're related if they are, maybe what they died from, maybe if you hear a name, what they did for a living. And she says, this is basically how a medium reading is done. So she said, I just want you to play, make somebody up. So I said, oh, all right, I'll go first. And so I'm holding this woman's hands. Oh, we had to connect heart to heart. And I said, okay, any of this woman's friends or family, my name's Sandra, and I don't know why I'm at this course. I'm thinking all this, but I'm willing to play. And so in my mind's eye, Brandon, I invented a man. So I said to this woman, I said, I see a man behind you. And I just start making up these details, just things that came into my mind. He would have been your grandfather on your mother's side. I hear in my mind, in my imagination, Denmark. Here in my mind, Jan. So I said, okay, his name is Jan from Denmark. I see in my imagination a picture of a fishing boat. I said, oh, he's a fisherman. I see a man puffing a cigarette. I said, oh, he died of lung cancer. And I said that he had a big gap between his front teeth. He had blonde hair, blue eyes. I said, because there's usually a message. I said, he never told your mother that he loved her while he was on Earth, and he regrets that, and could you please tell her that he loves her? So I opened my eyes, and I was really pretty matter of fact about it because I was making it up. So I opened my eyes.
You had the free pass to be Right.
I opened my eyes, and there's just streams of tears coming down her face. Her grandfather on her mom's side was named Jan.
Whoa.
He worked a fishing boat in Denmark. He died of lung cancer. He fit the description. And she had heard the stories that, her own mother was never told, I love you by her father. I got every detail correct.
Holy smokes. Talk about a star pupil. Are you kidding? That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really incredible. And what happened in that instant, it was one of those holy cow experiences for me.
Yeah. Your whole reality has just been altered, right?
If there is such things as mediums, my mind was thinking it wouldn't possibly be me. Because who am I? I'm a girl who doesn't believe in this. So then my partner, who didn't know a thing about me, correctly talked about my grandfather, that his name was John. He walked with a cane. He had a big German Shepherd dog, described what he wore for work. And I thought, oh my gosh. So for the course of those 3 days, I decided to just play with this, see where it's going to go. And I spent, it was less than half of the time that I was correct, because guess what? These images show up just like your imagination. So how do you distinguish what's your imagination and what's not? So the next person I went to work with, totally wrong. But then some things totally right. And so that weekend started settling my curiosity, my urge to know, and the fear of dying started disappearing. And so I didn't tell anybody I went on that course, because first of all, I'm the girl that doesn't believe this. And what would anybody say if I said I took a course in mediumship? They'd say, who do you see around me? And then me, if I got it wrong, I would be ridiculed. This is all my ego, and have this huge, like people would laugh at me like I laughed at other people. So I kept it quiet for many years.
Wow.
But very secretly, what I was doing is I thought, Jesus, if this is possible, what else is possible? So I would, on my free time, I dabbled in like hypnosis. I dabbled in learning it, not just taking a course. I mean, not just being hypnotized, but like learning how it works. I did a lot about human development things. There's, dowsing, how people would find underground streams of water, to put wells in, like, well, what's that all about? There's something called electronic voice phenomena, which I'd love to tell you the story, which is actually the thing that had me come out publicly about all of this. And then, and then fast forward just a little bit more, is that this ego of mine is pretty heavy duty, because I don't know where this came from, but I think a lot of us human beings feel like maybe we're not good enough. But I felt like I was stupid. Like there are things I wanted to share, but I thought nobody's ever going to believe me. So I very conveniently got busy in my own life, and would put all this miraculous stuff that I had seen and witnessed and experienced, like, on the back burner. And we all have this little voice inside of our head, and it's very often not empowering. It doesn't say kind things to me when I look in the mirror in the morning, or step on the scale, or any of those kind of things. But that little voice would tell me, my words didn't matter. Nobody's going to listen to you. What's more important is whatever my day-to-day life would be. It would say things like, those experiences didn't really happen. And so, looking back, I'm glad it all happened the way it did, because I've really witnessed how much I would believe that little voice in my head. And here's just a little side note. I decided to run a marathon just out of the blue, and I was not physically fit. And I thought, well, let me train. Let me just see how this happens. And so the long story short of it is that I ended up getting up to running probably about 16 miles, certainly not the 26.2 that it takes to run a marathon. But I decided I'm not going to run a marathon. But on one cold winter's day, I actually plotted out 26.2 miles from my house. I thought, well, at least I'm going to accomplish something. I'm going to walk a marathon. And so it took me almost 8 hours, but I did it. And so when I got home, I was all by myself. No, there was nobody cheering me on. But when I got back home, that little voice said to me, you didn't succeed because you didn't run it. Don't tell anybody. And, it hit me. Like, I don't care how you move 26.2 miles, whether you walk it, run it, crawl it, that is an accomplishment. And in that moment,
for sure,
Brandon, I'm thinking, and I've been buying into this little voice that's been telling me all this negative stuff. Right. So I like to call that voice the voice because so many times we think it's telling us the truth and it's not. And I think that's, and it was telling me, don't buy into life after death. Don't buy, like it didn't even have me question, so anyways.
Yeah. It makes me think of a episode that I just recorded where we talked just about this very thing. You're really not free until you stop caring what other people think, right?
Yes.
And you got all these ideas of why we're not good enough and what are people going to think. And if you can put that stuff aside long enough to actually enjoy yourself and to just live life on your own terms, and the amount of possibility that opens up is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's also when we can show the world who we really are, and we can be fully us without caring if we look bad or if we look silly or what somebody's going to say. Man, that's when we're the most lovable. Really is. Right. I think so anyways.
Embracing vulnerability is a superpower, I believe. And,
amen, brother.
And
yes.
And so I definitely applaud you for doing that, because obviously you've had a long, winding road in doing so. Now you're this, public figure, a book, We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery to Life After Death. I mean, you obviously have come full circle, right?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you a really synchronistic story.
As many as you got. I love them.
Yeah, I got some. I'll just sprinkle them in. When I had met that Doreen Virtue, and I had taken that 3-day course out in California, we each got an opportunity to have a one-on-one reading with her. And mine, I don't really remember. It was 2002. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Back before I was fully engaged in any of this. And she looked at me and she says, "You're going to change the world." I said, "Wow. What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm a chef for race car teams. What do you mean?"
Yeah.
She says, "You're going to help people believe in life after death."
Wow.
And she says, and it's going to come from you being, I don't even remember what the word was, like a not new ager, basically.
Right.
And there, and so that population will listen. And I'm looking at her like, well, nice for you to say, but you got me confused with somebody else, because I said I'm just dabbling in this to see if there's anything real. She's like, "Oh, it's okay. You don't have to believe me, but that's what's going to happen." She was so matter of fact about it. And I thought, and so now, and it took really the death of my dad to get me, and which I'll share about in a little bit, to get me launched about how important this stuff is. And so here we are recording this now on a nice summer's day, 2017. And I'm like, holy cow, I am the one. I have now, not just the book, somebody filmed a documentary about me, which is awesome. And I have my own podcast with almost 200 episodes now. And gosh, some days there's 10,000 listeners. It's like,
that's incredible.
I am the one.
That is incredible.
Yeah. So I can't turn around, and it's great.
Yeah. Well, I was not aware that there was a documentary. Now I definitely got to check it out. And your podcast is We Don't Die as well, correct?
Yes. Yep. And if you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, that's my main website. It's also sandrachamplain.com, but not everybody can spell my name. So anyways, it takes you to the same site, and you can see all the different episodes. And we share Dr. Eben Alexander, who was amazing, and so many more people, because I feel this desire now to learn more and who's out there, and everybody connect arm in arm. And now, like, we're really powerful getting this word out. And then also, if you click on products, that's where the book is, and then also the documentary, where it's a couple of bucks online. You can watch it. Yeah, I'm thrilled. Yeah, can you hear the smile?
I can hear it. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You are living your passion. You are helping other people, which there's nothing more rewarding than that, right? All right. Well, now seems like a good time to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting the Positive Head podcast. So, needless to say, I was very excited when they started supporting this show just a few months back. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. They have a plethora of amazing content to always keep your positive head spinning. For example, in the newly added documentary Sacred Space and the Healing Power of Resonance, best-selling author and researcher Freddie Silva reveals how ancient sacred sites and real crop circles contain an energy code that can be transmitted at a distance to heal organisms, including people, a concept found in resonance therapy and radionics. Just slightly more interesting than another night of old Friends reruns, right? So this is just one example of fascinating content you can find on Gaia. As you all hear me constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. In your Doreen Virtue story, it makes me remember a story from one of my, a good friend of mine, Nick. I remember him telling me his dad had a really powerful experience at a Doreen Virtue seminar or something, where now her main focus is communicating with angelic entities, right?
I believe it is. I've lost track
kind of
of
like
all she's doing, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot, every time I see her name, it's somehow tied to that. And I had a friend who actually went to one of her seminars, and while he's in the bathroom peeing, an angel appears to him and communicates with him, and he has this life-changing experience at her conference. So she's obviously a very powerful force on many. Yeah, isn't that wild?
It is. I love synchronistic stories. I've got a couple more up my sleeve for you. Yes, I do. Well, can I tell you the EVP story? What, you can ask me a question?
I think it's the question I was going to ask leads to the EVP story, because you had said that's what caused you to kind of open up and come out to the world after many years of sort of, reading in the closet. So, and researching in the closet. So please, I'd love to hear what kind of put you over the edge to lead you here.
Yeah. Great story. And throughout this time, after I first started finding out about life after death and the Doreen Virtue thing, I would meet a lot of people who have lost a loved one and were grieving. And I felt this sense of guilt, like, oh, if only I could tell them what I know. So I started feeling this moral responsibility to keep digging so that I'll be able to share without having that fear of what's somebody going to tell me? Somebody's going to ask me, who do you see around me? That's a huge fear. Anyway, so there I was in a bookstore, and this bright orange book is in my view, and it's called The Idiot's Guide to Communicating with Spirits. And I thought, that's a book for me, one of those books that fall off the shelf.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I start reading through it, and the person who wrote it was a minister and a spiritualist religion, and her name is Rita Berkowitz, and she is what's called a spirit artist. She's now retired, but throughout the book, there's pictures of people as they lived, real photographs, and if you went to see her for a medium reading, she would not only tell you about that person, she'd draw a picture of them, a portrait.
Wow.
So I thought, oh my gosh, that's incredible. So then I start learning about spiritualism. It seems like Christian-based philosophy, although they don't talk about Jesus as the savior. Jesus is a medium kind of a person. Made a huge worldwide impact. But they're of the belief that our loved ones are around, and at the end of every service, the minister will go around the room and tell you who the deceased loved ones are, just as a proof of our lives going on. And I thought, where does one find one of these spiritualist churches?
Yeah, that's a lot more interesting than my church was as a kid.
Yeah. And so I turned to the back of the book, and Reverend Rita and her church were just 45 minutes away from where I live in Massachusetts.
Wow.
Coincidence? I don't think so. So on one Sunday morning, I make the drive down to Quincy, Massachusetts, and attend one of these services. And so I actually get a chance to meet Reverend Rita and sit through the whole thing. And she takes one look at me and she says, "Oh, do you know who you are?" I'm like, "Sandra Champlain," And she says, "Oh," she says, "No." She says, "You're a teacher. You're a healer. You've got a big, mission." She tells me something similar to the Doreen Virtue, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, not again!" Right?
There it goes again.
So she welcomes me back for the following week, and I go, and instead of having the the minister do the medium reading, she says, I've got special guests, Tom and Lisa. No, not Tom and Lisa Butler. There's a couple that talked about Tom and Lisa Butler, who were the people behind this EVP, electronic voice phenomena. There's an association. And so this husband and wife got up and they said, well, we never really bought into this. And the husband was very scientifically minded. And he said, to believe something, I have to experience it. So we did this test to see if this electronic voice phenomena is real. So basically what it is taking a tape recorder of some type and recording the sound of a fan in the background, an air conditioner, a blank station that's just the static on a radio. And then when you play it back, very possibly there could be voices. And I'm thinking, no way, that's crazy. So he said, both my wife and I were married. We had previous marriages and we both lost children. Children passed away. So he says, my wife and I left the house. We left this fan running. And so our tape recorder only recorded the sounds of this fan. So he says, I'd like to play for you what was on our tape recorder when we came back in. And it said, hello, Mom and Dad, we're still here. Don't be scared. And there's like this little giggling. I might not have the words exactly, but it was something like that. We're still here with you. I think that's what it was. We're still here with you. Giggle, giggle, giggle. And so I get goosebumps telling that story now because I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And so then he said, okay, so if you're interested in finding out more about this, there's this couple called Tom and Lisa Butler, head of the Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena, AAEVP.com. Okay, I'm taking notes. And so I buy this book. There is no death and there are no dead. I learn all about electronic voice phenomena. I thought, bingo, if I can capture a voice, then I will be able to give people the proof that they need. It doesn't have to come out of my brain that the afterlife is real. So anyways, I sit at home, I have all the equipment out, and I start tuning the radio to one of these staticky channels. And Brandon, I have to tell you, the good Catholic girl, the voice comes in and says, this is the devil's work. If you
yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, you're doing something wrong.
It's always the devil.
You can't, you can't be doing this. So I put this, I didn't even record. I put the tape recorder and the book in my drawer. So fast forward to October, I think it was 2005. And I was going through one of these phases that I was overworked, overweight, felt like crap. And I just wanted to go on a retreat. And so I said, okay, I got this weekend free. There's this place up in upstate New York called the Omega Center, vegetarian food, nature walks, always courses you can take. I'm going to just book something there that weekend. So that particular weekend, who's speaking? One of the seminars, Tom and Lisa Butler on electronic voice phenomena. So I'm thinking, I am guided here. Like I am meant to be here. And I'm scared because now, is this the devil's work? I remember playing records backwards and listening for that as a kid. So I take myself there. And again, I'm not going to tell anybody about this. But what happened was there's only, I think, 7 of us in the course with Tom and Lisa Butler, and everybody who had lost a loved one, everybody was looking for proof that they lived on. It made total sense that they said, our deceased loved ones live in a energetic realm, like, what I would explain right now is where the internet is, wireless internet signals, wireless radio and television signals, they're all around all of us right now, but we can't see them. So I really got the picture. You don't need to see it to believe it. Like, stuff happening that we don't see, that's very real. So basically we would start recording sounds of nothing and hope that there's voices that come through. And over the course of the first 2 days, and of course they played lots of examples of these messages that came through. And they said many of them are humorous, most of them are loving and I love yous. There hadn't been any scary ones, even though the movie White Noise said there's all these scary ones. That's all Hollywood.
Of course.
Anyway, so I'm really believing this is real, but of course now I'm not getting a message. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go into my cabin. And I had a cabin in the woods and very safe place, but there was just a ton of rain. And I thought, I wonder if rain would be a good background noise, So I said, because I'm really now, like, I really want to get one of these messages.
Right.
So I turned my tape recorder on and I envisioned my grandparents and an aunt and uncle in the room. And of course, I'm thinking I'm talking to myself. And I said, if you guys are really here and I am meant to help people believe in the afterlife, I said, I really need you to talk loud. I said, so I'm going to let this record for a minute and then I'm going to say goodnight. So there I am, feeling kind of like a fool with the record button on,
Right.
recording the sound of raindrops. After a minute, I say, okay, good night. So turned it off. Well, in classroom, Brandon, we would put our audio recordings in Tom Butler's computer, and then we'd turn up the volume and we'd try to loop it around and try to hear, these messages and the background sounds. And it was very hard to hear. Well, anyways, I didn't have any of that. I just had my headphones and I popped those into my little digital tape recorder. And I start listening, I hear raindrops, hear raindrops, hear raindrops. And then at where the counter said 45 seconds, all of a sudden my body was filled with goosebumps. And I'm like, there's a voice on this. And so I rewound it. And what it says in a man's voice, it says, good night, Sandra. And then two women say, good night, good night. And then another male's voice says, good night.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, goosebumps again on my arms telling the story. But I was both excited and kind of scared that night because I'm thinking, this is all real. There's people around me and I just can't see them.
And all you did was just turn on some background noise in a recorder. So I could do it with my cell phone basically, or anything that records.
I would think so. I haven't practiced with cell phone technology, just the recorder. But basically there was a prayer beforehand. They said, imagine, see, there's something about this, imagine the safe white space that I'm in, right? That isn't not the first time I'd heard that. And imagine that it's just jam-packed with energy. And so I would imagine the moon just, funneling in like this power-packed, glistening, sparkly kind of energy. And, I'm thinking I'm making this stuff up, but I also thought I was making up the people in California, and I was not. So it was that, and then asking our loved ones to be there and with a very pure heart, if there's a message. And so when I got to class the next day, I tell Tom and Lisa Butler, I got one, I felt like I was fishing and I got the big one. But what happened is the other people that had lost their loved ones, they knew just from the sound that I got that their loved ones were okay, even though they personally didn't get it. So that I said, I got to start telling people about this. So then I did. And so people were funny because they're like, I don't believe it. And I said, well, let's try to do play. Recordings. Yeah. So not only did I do that, but I started working with people all for free, never charged a penny, just as a science project. The best I could do to recreate the sound of the water was to put the shower on or sink on in the background. And what started happening sometimes is in my mind's eye, I would see a picture of a person and then there was this one man that I met at a conference because I went to an afterlife conference. I had the guts to go somewhere there like that. Right. And I said, I'm seeing this little girl with pigtails and a gap between her front teeth, blue eyes, brown hair. I don't remember her name, but it was like Cindy. And on the recording, it said, hello, Billy. Remember the game we used to play? Remember Clue? Well, I perfectly described his sister. That was her name, and that was the game they played. Wow. So he knew that his sister went on. And so I got many stories like that. But what happened was, conveniently, my brain says, your business is suffering. I had a second business then. I owned a coffee and chocolate store. I was very busy with both businesses. And I conveniently bought into nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to listen. What's more important is my failing businesses. And I put all that stuff on the back burner. Someday I'm going to write a book on this. But I always said someday, but not now. Right. Right. So, time goes by so fast. Anyways, I want to talk about my dad's death, which really propelled me into, darn it, I'm going to get this out globally. Can I do that?
Right. Yes, please.
Yeah. Sometimes I take over the conversation. Maybe because
That's what this is about. Hey, you know what? I do 5 episodes a week. So my interview episodes are I love them because I'm like, I get to hear someone other than myself and with different thoughts, experiences, etc. And I'm sure as much as my listeners love me, for the most part, they appreciate it too. So this is all about you. Please take over.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for your generous listening. So my dad, when was it? It was 2010. We find out that he has a tumor that has broken apart part of his spine. And my dad was very healthy at the age of 73, 74. He was still somebody who bicycled 20 miles a day. And in just 5 months' time, he went from really healthy to being diagnosed with cancer to finally taking his last breath. And it was horrible. Anyone who has lost a loved one with cancer, I could not even imagine seeing somebody suffer like they did. And my dad and I developed a really, really, really close relationship. In fact, I was the only single kid, so I relocated from Massachusetts to Florida to be with him for most of the time between going off and doing my catering job, catering for the race car teams. And we really developed a very, very close relationship. It was really great. In fact, here's one of those other synchronistic stories. I didn't practice mediumship after I did the Doreen Virtue thing because, again, I don't know, there was just not a calling for it in my mind. I just didn't feel like I was the one for that. But looking into my dad's eyes, knowing that his time on earth was limited, I'm like, Dad, there's something I've got to tell you. And he's like, sweetie pie, you can tell me anything. And I'm thinking, Dad went to church every single day of his life. And his adult life. And I'm thinking, he's going to think I'm nuts, right? This is the devil's work for sure. But I shared with him the Doreen Virtue thing, the EVP thing, some of the courses that I've taken. And he just had these big eyes and he held my hand. And, a part of me feels that even very religious people that believe in God and believe in the afterlife, it is faith. But towards those final weeks and months and days faced with a terminal illness, there's fear there. I can't help but think that there wouldn't be, right? So anyways, I said, and then all of a sudden, Brandon, this was so bizarre, but I see in my mind's eye this yellow Piper Cub airplane with black letters. And I'm like, well, this is strange. But it came out of nowhere. And I said, Dad, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I said, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing the name Jim. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing, tell your dad I did get to bring my toys with me. This is bizarre. So I said, Dad, I don't know if this means anything, but this is coming into my mind. And so my dad started to cry and he said, whoa, my dad had been a cancer survivor from 30 years prior. And he would help other cancer patients believe that they can heal themselves and they can, so many great things my dad did. But to his friend Jim, who owned a yellow Piper Cub with black letters, he said, Jim, you can fight this cancer because you don't get to bring your toys with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's coming now saying I did get to bring them with me.
Correct.
Wow.
I know. So my dad's like, I want to know everything. So I told him everything. Dad said, Sandra, you promised me you write a book on this. I said, Dad, I promise. Thinking, how the heck am I going to do that? But I promised. Well, Dad passes away. And in that time, I had a pretty close relationship with my siblings. I never thought that we could ever have any problems. And we started fighting about Dad's care. And then after Dad passed away, Dad's belongings, I got labeled as the greedy sister. And basically the relationships I had with my siblings fell apart. And in fact, out of the 4 kids, there's only one after 7 years that we're talking, right? I wish I could tell everybody that I'm so transformed that I'm able to fix every problem, but I'm not. And I'm still human and I still do the best I can. But, with other people involved, we know
two.
what I'm trying to say. It takes two. So it was a time of not only losing my dad, which was incredibly painful, but now not only losing relationships with my siblings, going, what the heck happened? Like, how could we be fighting about things that never even happened? And how could I be labeled the greedy sister when I thought, gosh, everybody else is married, let me help out. And so I hit an all-time low as a human being. Not suicidal, but I could totally get why anybody who would feel this bad would want to check out on life. So
Wow.
I was able to have some, compassion and see it. And I felt really dark and dismal. And it was almost like, you see in the cartoons, the light bulb went out. But in my mind's eye, it was like, Sandra, start studying grief. And so I just wanted to feel better, is the truth. But I started digging into grief. And certainly there's people go through the angry stage and the bargaining stage and the acceptance finally and all these things, denial. But I thought, why does it have to hurt so bad? And why would good, loving people become such monsters? Even myself. I saw an anger in me that I've never felt before. And so I actually decided to dig until I found an answer. And lo and behold, I found it. I found out that our brain chemistry changes when we experience grief, whether, the most devastating is from loss of a loved one, but it can also happen if we lose a relationship, and go through a divorce or any kind of separation, if we lose our finances, if we're faced with a terrible illness, even empty nest syndrome when, moms can lose their children off to college. And it's a very real thing. And this is a really poor comparison, but it's the best one I have, that if you could imagine somebody has been addicted to, say, a drug, right? Like you can really picture that person. And if you pull that drug away from them, they go through what's called withdrawal. And their body is going through this huge chemical change, and it's really fighting, trying to get that substance. And they're not pretty. Well, when we are grieving, that substance that we're addicted to, it's love. It's that thing, and it's very real when we lose that connection. And so we lose a very large amount of healthy neurotransmitters that run through our system. And the impact of that is these neurotransmitters control our mood. That's why we get so angry and so sad. They control our perception. So a lot of people that are grieving can tell you, like, I can't remember if I ate breakfast this morning. Can't remember where I put my keys. Well, it controls our memory. It controls our view of life. So things that we see happening, our brain might store them other ways than they actually did. And all of a sudden, I've got this aha. Like my siblings and I were fighting about things that didn't happen because we are dealing with unhealthy brains that don't know this, right? So then I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then I kept digging and digging and digging. And okay, what can we do to restore our healthy, chemicals in our brain, and doing anything that makes us feel good, whether it's sunlight or watching a movie or reading or being in the present moment, things that will take our mind off of whatever the suffering is. Anyway, so fast forward, I learned so much, and so much helped me with my own grief, that I created this free audio called How to Survive Grief. And this still is on the website survivegrief.com today. It's a 70-minute audio all about grief and how to survive it, et cetera, and so forth. And so I put it out there, and I said, this, and at the time, I only had a couple hundred friends on Facebook, but I said, you know what, this information helped me through the death of my dad. If anybody knows anybody who's had a loss, feel free to share it. Well, in a matter of a couple of months, over 3,000 people had heard it. And people started writing me that not only did it help ease their pain, but that's when I started getting emails that I chose not to kill myself because of your words. Wow. Because I describe in that audio what thoughts your brain will tell you. And people, if you've never experienced grief and you hit that rock bottom, and all of a sudden somebody's telling you it's natural for your brain to be telling you this, like, oh my God, that's not me. So
and you can create separation between you and the thought, right?
Correct. And so much more. And so you get enough emails that say, you've changed my life. I have life because of you. My children have a mother because of you. I was going to, end my life, but I get enough of these. And then Brandon, I actually felt like I have a moral responsibility to get these words out as far as I can. And I thought, well, how do I do that? And I thought, I made that promise to Dad that I got to write a book. God, I'm not smart enough to write a book. Who's going to listen to me? And then, as miracles happen, I am on the internet, and I found a how to write a book seminar called Author 101 University, and I go to it, and I actually meet the publisher, and I, for the very first time, had the courage to share my whole story, and I was scared because this man, I'm thinking he's going to think I'm crazy, especially I talk about EVPs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't. I found out his dad had just passed away, and my words really helped him just in that short conversation. And he says, have you ever written a book? I said, no. Have you ever written anything? No. And he says, do me a favor. Your most powerful words. He says, write it like you're writing to me. And he says, tell me your story. And he told me how to, look up how to write a book proposal. And I did everything he said. And I gave him the book proposal. And then that's when I get the phone call. How soon can you have this whole book written? We'd love to publish you. And so I strategically, and just a little plug for my book, but yes, the title is We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And I do deliver on every single thing that I learned that makes me believe life after death is real. But then chapter 10 is that audio about grief. And then I thought, people can come because they want to learn about life after death, but darn it, they're going to get the information about grief. And then the rest of it, very similar to guests you have on your show, is how to have an empowering life while you're here on earth. And I just thought of one small synchronistic moment that I can't let go by with the book.
Please don't.
I know you're going to love it. Well, it's actually two things. When it came time to create a subtitle, I thought, I don't know. I knew the book was going to be called We Don't Die, but I didn't know a subtitle. I had a friend of mine that was helping me brainstorm it. And all of a sudden on an airplane, I hear in my mind, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Thought, that's it. And so when I landed and I called him, he started to cry, big manly man, because he said to me, last night before I went to bed, I wrote down the exact same 7 words.
Wow.
A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And also, I have the magnificent Dr. Bernie Siegel, who wrote the foreword to my book, and he also wrote the blurb for the front cover. And the day that he sent me the blurb that he'd like to have on the front cover was also the same day I received the cover, possible cover from a book cover designer. Now, I never told her what I wanted on the book, nothing. I just said, this is this is the book so far what I have. And so she sends me this beautiful picture of a bridge crossing into a golden light. And on the very same day, I get this email from Dr. Bernie Siegel, who says the blurb he would like to have on the front cover is, this book will allow you to truly understand creation and the nature of life. Perfection awaits us all when we leave our bodies and cross the bridge.
Wow. Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he didn't know the cover designer. I mean, it's just so many good things. And so,
isn't it amazing how that opens up,
Yeah.
When you get in the state.
Yeah. And so then now the book's out, and there's nothing I can do but now share it. And what I found is, yes, in the very beginning, there was this fear of telling people that I've written this book, but more people than not have wanted to read it. They wanted to know my stories, men and women alike. I find that most people, although, we all have this voice in our mind that's fearful of what people will think of us, but so many people have had some kind of an interesting experience, whether it's knowing who's going to answer who's going to be on the phone before, when the phone rings or whatever that is. So people are open. And
Yeah.
it just has been widely discussed. We do have a fear. It's human, I think, of what people will think. But now I am so far out of the closet, especially with my podcast. And I'll be speaking at a big afterlife conference called the Afterlife Symposium in September.
Oh, cool.
2017, Scottsdale, Arizona, all about the afterlife. Very exciting stuff. I'm not turning back, because without the fear of dying, I really do feel that we don't have to have a fear of living,
Yeah, I love that. I love the work. And it's, I always try and drive home the point on my show. Time is an illusion. We're floating in eternity now. We know time is an illusion. So, you're here in the physical at this moment. You're physically focused, but it's just death is a birth, right? When we die here, we're born to the dimension from which we came, which we died to that dimension in a sense when we were born here. So death is a birth and birth is a death, and you have nothing to sort of fear. These transitions are things that you do, time and time and time again. It's just another, fork in the road of your eternal journey.
And there's no such thing as failure. Human beings, they say our biggest fears are fear of dying, fear of failure, and fear of being alone. And, the good news is there's no such thing as failure. I think this is all growth for our soul. There's no, to have a fear of dying. Well, we don't die. You're going to simply close your eyes here, open them somewhere else. Great. And all your loved ones are going to be there cheering you on. Big parade for you. You've made it through the finish line.
Right.
And then
which is what I always envision. This is what I always envision.
It's awesome. And
where's the party with all my friends and family who are glad I'm back and we're part of my journey?
Animals too. I hear, like I said, I've had almost 200 conversations with people. Many have had near-death experiences. Oh, and the stories just give me goosebumps, because your pets are there too, your grandparents, your friends. I mean, just
nothing is lost.
We look back on our life, and that is a kind of a fear that I have: is did I get my money's worth out of life?
Right. Right. Well, so have you had any, another subject that's very closely tied here that I find very fascinating is reincarnation. Have you had any sort of experiences, bumps up against that topic, or memories or anything like that?
Yeah, interesting. With my hypnosis courses, and even studying with a little bit with Dr. Brian Weiss, and learning about past lives, like that's some juicy stuff. And so personally, I buy into reincarnation as a reality, especially, when a little child dies. How could it be that's their only shot, right? Like I refuse to believe it. But one of the guests that I had on my show, really interesting, as a very, very young age, her son would have these dreams and be screaming out like the ship is going down, the ship is going down, and like really scary stuff. And then he started to draw pictures at like 3-4 years old of a ship that looked very close to the Titanic. And so the older he got, not only would he draw the pictures, but he would draw the diagrams of what the floors look like and where the stairwells were and stuff like that. And also, the Titanic had, the smokestacks that come out of the top. There were, I think there were 4 on it. I can't really remember. But what she had said was that in all of his pictures, there was just 3 smoke coming only out of 3 of them. And he'd say things like, "Oh, Mama, that's because that other one was a dummy stack. We made it to make the ship look good, but it wasn't really needed." And so,
wow, what a weird thing for a child to say.
Yeah, and to find out that that's the truth.
Even weirder.
And that his floor layouts were correct. And she said at 5 or 6 years old, she brought him to a Titanic exhibit. And she says most little kids were just running around and they had no interest in it. But this little kid, he stopped and he looked at everything. Wow. So I thought, and there's a guy, I don't know if you've researched Dr. Ian Stevenson. He's deceased now, but he studied over 3,000 memories of children. And was able to connect to people that had actually lived, children that would speak a foreign language. Of course, they didn't learn it, like so many fascinating things. And so I love it. I love the whole thought of it. And what a lot of people say is if we don't complete something in this lifetime, there is reincarnation, and we'll do it again. And, some of these things I don't really want to do again. So sometimes when I think,
it's a little intimidating, right?
Oh, yeah. And also, one other thing people say that have had all these near-death experiences is that we have this life review, and that we actually witness our life from the impact it had on other people. So we feel the pain we've caused people. It seems to be
a very common, Yeah,
but then we see the joy and we see the ripple effect. So, like, for instance, one of your shows might be the thing to help get somebody on track with their life or starting a business or whatever that may be, but you'll actually get to see the ripple effect that it had on their lifetime. So
maybe this show, maybe we'll be watching. We'll be watching. Remember when we did this show and we can see the ripple effect?
Toasting a glass of champagne or something. Yeah, But what it makes me do is, like I said at the beginning, I'm still human. I don't have it all figured out. But there are times in my life when I'm like, I want to bend the truth a little. Yeah, maybe lie, right? And I thought, oh, geez, if I'm going to have to replay this in some time, I better do the right thing. Oh, so it does. It has me do the right thing. It has me be as compassionate and I even though things aren't settled within my own family. One sister it is, and now we have a closer relationship than we did before. But I think what it does is it keeps me on my path, because I know this is happening to other families. And if I do trust that we don't die, I totally believe that there are these soul contracts that we make with some of the players in our life. Like, hey, you come into my life, you do this, so I can learn this, and then maybe we're all in on it, maybe. So
I think so.
Yeah, that helps me, and then all I can keep doing is doing the best I can, doing what I know to do. And I love it. I love it.
It's obvious. I mean, it radiates off of you. You are such a powerful energy and presence, and obviously such a bright light, and so encouraging to hear your own journey. And I'm certainly appreciative of you. Taking the time to share and connect here. Well, speaking before we kind of wrap things up here, what's next for you? Where do you take this from here? Any plans?
Well, yeah, I've gotten the term "we don't die" trademarked.
Oh, cool.
And I see before me what's happening is not just my podcast, but I have invited my listeners to join the group. We Don't Die listeners on Facebook. I know you have a positive head a Facebook group too that I just applied to be in. But I have created this map. You might want to do this too of your listeners. And it's showing like, there's a big group showing up in Boston. There's a big group in Salt Lake City and a big group in Australia. And so I want to have like seminars and speak and have people have their own local, I don't want to call them support groups. It's more support about living, but human beings thrive when they can be part of something. So like being part of your radio show, your podcast, being part of your Facebook group, being able to talk to like-minded people about what's in our heart. I think all of us, when we look at life as an education for the soul, when we look at that we're here to learn, to love, to forgive, to, like I said, get our money's worth out of life, to take risks, go after our dreams, we can help support each other. So I'm seeing like in my mind's eye, like how do I do that? Through speaking, like I'm speaking at the Afterlife. Afterlifestudies.org is the website if anybody wants to check out that great symposium I'll be speaking at. But it's to create like not just the virtual world, but real friends, real communities that we talk the same language and that we can really help each other succeed in life. That we can, if we have a fear, we can encourage each other. So I'm sure there'll be another book or some kind of a course or something in the future. But I continue to learn. I continue to interview great people and share, and wherever I can make a difference, that's
Love it.
That's it.
Well,
that's it.
I have no doubt that you will continue to send positive ripples everywhere you happen to be, and it's certainly been a pleasure to have you on this show. I do have one last question I'd like to leave you with. I always open with the same question, end with the same question. The closing question is, in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Sandra Champlain?
Oh, the meaning of life, according to Sandra Champlain, is coming to a place we call planet Earth, where it's unlike heaven, where it's all good all of the time, which could be very, very boring. It's a place where we can work and be with other people, where we can experience emotions, where we can set up challenges for ourselves, and we can learn, we can grow. Meaning of life is it's an education for the soul. It is giving our soul a richness. In so many different ways. There's so many different emotions, Brandon, and to be able to experience them, and even a bigger gift is to help another person, to serve another person. And so this playground we call planet Earth is a place for all of that, to love, to serve, to learn, to forgive ourselves for others. But ultimately, it is that we are all this eternal soul that is having a human experience, that it is a place for us to learn and to shine, polishing the diamond, so to speak, that we are.
I love that. Sandra, thank you so much for taking the time to share and connect. You are a lovely diamond indeed, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Oh, and a little gift for you and your listeners. If you go to my website, WeDon'tDieRadio.com or SandraChamplain.com, it'll say, click here to join our Insiders Club. And I don't spam you, I promise, but it'll say, you can get the audio, How to Survive Grief. And it also says you can get the first chapter of my book. Here's the gift. It's the whole book. Because I know in our 1 hour interview, there's no way I could tell you all the different things that have me know that life after death is real, and everything else that I deliver, and everything about grief. So if you join that Insiders Club, you can get it all, and I welcome people to listen to my shows as well. There's no selling, no commercials, just like you. It is just heart-to-heart conversations that'll, I guarantee, will make a difference in your life.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's such a gracious gift. I know there will definitely be people that want to come and take advantage of that generous offer. And thank you again, Sandra. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you too. Thank you. I'm proud to be your friend.
Indeed. Till next time, journey well. Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes. Since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting, your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world, because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish, based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this: as long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.